as you've repeated several times now, you're not even a huge Trump supporter, and yet you are put in a position where you have to defend some of these ideals. I'm not a Trump supporter, and I feel the same way. If I want to stand up for the ideals that I stand for, I have to call this nonsense out. Because apparently no one in the media will do it. You know, there's another great example of that. Did you see a couple weeks ago when that guy tried to bum rush Trump on stage? And then the next night, he was on CNN and all the news channels, and they were treating him as if he was some legit voice of counter-protest. But meanwhile, he was trying to attack a presidential candidate, whether you like Trump or not, right? So this is fully the fault of the media here, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, you flip it around. If a right-winger had tried to attack Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, he wouldn't be on CNN the next day being given a complimentary, welcoming platform. Yet we see this again and again. And, you know, Trump is a creation of social justice warriors at the end of the day. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And people are just tired. They're tired of being lectured about how racist they are. They're tired about being lectured to check their privilege. And whether you agree with Trump or not, and I don't agree with him on things like torture or surveillance, but this is the backlash. You know, these people who support Trump are so condescended towards by the mainstream media, but they had to work for everything they had. These are mainly quite poor blue-collar workers that are supporting Trump, but they're sick of being made to feel guilty about who they are. But the establishment still doesn't recognize that fact and just labels them racists and bigots. They still don't get it. They still don't get what's driving this phenomenon. And it might end up, you know, slapping them in the face. Yeah,
well, I think it's slapping them in the face right now. So how much of this do you think is establishment politicians and just the establishment on both the Democrats and the Republicans in bed with the media, that they've all gotten so fat for so long, that they've all just asked terrible questions and no good follow-ups, and they've all just been in this game for so long that their fear of Trump is that he's going to leave a lot of these guys without a job, a lot of these pundits on TV and all these people who have professionally gotten everything wrong for years, but they've had a gig. And a lot of these people, I think, well, I'm not going to have a gig if Trump gets in. So they're protecting their own asses more than anything else.
Well, that's definitely part of it. I mean, the other part of it is, you know, Trump is self-funded. He's a maverick. He might be a rich, bigoted buffoon, but he's unpredictable. And the elite, the establishment, the political establishment is used to having not one, but two candidates in every single presidential race that they control. I mean, you go back to 2004, you know, Bush and Kerry, both skull and bones members. That's, you know, that's business as usual for the political elite. Somebody like Trump comes along, he's a loose cannon. He's unpredictable. They don't know what he's going to do. I think if he got in power, he would immediately start, you know, moderating his rhetoric or whatever. But they're scared stiff because it's simply an unknown quantity. And as he said, a lot of, you know, people in the establishment who have relied on this status quo for so long, for decades, are now petrified because, you know, he's come along and upturned the apple cart. People are scared.
Yeah. So do you view this all as just a big negotiating ploy with him? Because, you know, I was seeing this week, he made this comment that, you know, maybe Japan should have nukes. And everyone was saying, well, then he's going to start a nuclear arms race. But what he really was saying was either Japan should be able to defend itself with nukes because North Korea is there and China and everything else, or they should pay us to defend them, meaning pay the United States because we basically have agreements that we defend them militarily. So it's not that crazy of a proposal that we should be paid. You know, if you were a celebrity, you pay your bodyguard, right? So do you think a lot of this is that he just throws this stuff out there, then gets misquoted, you know what I mean? The media runs with it. He wants to start a nuclear arms race. And then it even strengthens him more because then people go, wait a minute, that wasn't that crazy of a proposal.
No, they just run with the banner headline that suits their agenda. And as you said, if you actually drill down into what he's saying, sometimes it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes he just misspeaks entirely. I mean, back a few months ago, he advocated bringing in Syrian refugees, then within 24 hours completely reversed his position. So it's partly that. But geopolitically, from a geopolitical standpoint, Trump is better than anyone else, and definitely Hillary Clinton. I mean, they called Trump Islamophobic. He's not the one who voted for a war that killed 1 million Muslims. You know, he's not the one that supported regime change in Syria and Libya that led to this migrant crisis in the first place. Hillary Clinton did. He's not the one who's amping up for World War III with Russia, as every other single GOP candidate has during the debates. So if you want to talk, I mean, there's all this rhetoric about, Trump, the world's going to explode the day Trump gets into office because he's so crazy and out of control. If you actually look at his prior record and what he's advocating in terms of America's military role in the world, it's the most peaceful, definitely out of all the GOP candidates, and definitely over and above Hillary Clinton, who voted for the Iraq war.
It's funny. I was at a very liberal, progressive LA party this weekend, and people were freaking out over Trump. And I kept trying to say to them, guys, if you fear Trump, if you're a liberal or a progressive or anyone on the left, you should fear Ted Cruz far more than you fear Donald Trump. But I couldn't get people to quite understand why. And I'm sort of amazed by that.
Well, it's because they don't read. I mean, that's the main problem.
I guess.
They don't read beyond headlines. And if you actually listen to Trump's speeches, which, he rambles on for an hour or so, but if you actually listen to most of them, most of his speeches are devoted to things like trade deals. I mean, this is why people are voting for him. It's a reaction, to the lost jobs, to the ruined towns in middle America because of NAFTA, because of these trade deals that have screwed them over. If you map his supporters, it correlates almost directly with deindustrialization and despair, these areas of America that have been completely abandoned, completely left to rot by these trade deals that have resulted in the great sucking sound of these jobs leaving America. So, watch his speeches. A liberal, a progressive will never watch his speeches. It's not mainly about building a wall. It's not mainly about banning Muslims. It's mainly about trade. And that's why he has a lot of support amongst blue-collar workers, because people's jobs have been shipped abroad and they're furious about it. And that's mainly a left-wing position to be complaining about that. It has been in the past. So It's interesting that most liberals just aren't aware of the main body of his actual speech and why people are attracted to his campaign.
Well, that's like when, they'll tweet out, they'll say, oh, look, Trump ties are made in Mexico. And they say, oh, what a hypocrite he is. But that doesn't prove he's a hypocrite. That shows he's a good businessman. He's used our shitty trade deals that our politicians have signed to make money here. And he's saying, I will change those deals so people like me won't have to do that. Somehow that's lost on all my liberal friends, no matter how many times I bring that up.
Exactly. And also what's lost on them, and if you look at the lines of people going to these Trump events, which again, we've had reports in Wisconsin this week, a lot of Asian Americans, quite a few black people. In fact, back when Rubio was in the race, Trump had more than double the support from Muslim Americans than every other GOP candidate combined. He's set to break records for black voter support for a Republican candidate. So again, this narrative that it's just about bigotry and racism is just surface crap. You delve a little bit below and you have to understand the wider phenomenon, why he has this support. This is about a complete political revolution. This is about an overthrow of the status quo. Americans are sick of it, and now finally they're putting their vote behind it, whether it be for Trump or Sanders.
Yeah, so let's move away from Trump a little bit. I want to back up to something you said about Hillary. So Hillary, in your eyes, because of obviously all the connections between her husband and the establishment connections that she's been involved in this forever, from being a first lady to a senator, a secretary of state and all that, she's absolutely who the establishment wants, right? Do you see any wiggle room on that?
Oh, no way. The establishment's behind Hillary 100%. I mean, I went to Bilderberg it was Denmark in 2014, Austria 2015. And even back then, we got the inside leak from the Bilderberg Group meeting, which is this conference of 120 influential bankers, politicians, academics. And even back then, they had come together and said, Hillary's our pick for 2016. We're going to try and defund all her competition. So years back, Hillary was their pick. I mean, in 2008, she took the fall for Obama, and that was decided at a meeting in Chantilly, coincidentally the same location where the Bilderberg meeting was taking place back in 2018. So, yeah, Hillary's been a shoo-in for a long time now for the elite.
So where does this put Sanders in your mind? Because look, he wants a lot of the changes. You know, ironically, Sanders and Trump are talking about a lot of the same stuff, right? They both want to severely change the power structure, change the system, yet their supporters seem to absolutely hate each other. So I suspect you agree with some of the heart of Sanders, just not the policy?
I can't bring myself to agree with somebody who says that bread lines aren't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, this idea that Bernie Sanders supporters, if he loses to Hillary, which looks like it's almost certainly going to happen, are then going to go and vote for Trump because he's the other anti-establishment option. I just don't buy that, because for the very reason you just said, they absolutely hate each other. I don't think many of Bernie Sanders supporters really jive with his anti-establishment cred. I think they jive more with this extreme left-wing social justice warrior, pro-socialist, pro-massive welfare state position, which I can't bring myself to agree with. But just from the behavior of his supporters over the past couple of months has really turned me off to anything that Bernie Sanders stands for, unfortunately.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I don't know that I've ever felt this way about a candidate, and I don't even know that I could have made this up. But I like him more than I like the reasons that people are supporting him. I think, this is what I was telling Milo Yiannopoulos a couple of weeks ago, I think he himself is a decent guy, whether I disagree with him or not. But the underpinnings of what he's bringing, I think, are really dangerous. And that's what I fear. And that's a strange place to feel about a candidate, when you like them, but you don't like what they're sort of bringing along with them. I don't know that I've ever felt that way before about somebody.
Well, no, and it's for the same reason that the Trump phenomenon's happened. I mean, you can't control him. He's a maverick. He's unpredictable. They wouldn't be able to buy him off. So whatever his policies, which I fundamentally disagree with, he still represents a threat to the establishment because he's an unknown quantity. So, I mean, that's why Sanders has paralleled the Trump phenomenon. But, you know, the way it looks now, he's basically got no chance. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen to his voters. But I very much doubt they're going to go over to Trump in the kind of numbers that people are suggesting.
Right. So with the Sanders people, my sense is that a lot of them really want to just burn the system down. And that's sort of why I can't get behind them. Because, yeah, we have a lot of problems in America. We've done bad things internationally. There's too much money in politics. We need a fairer economic system, all kinds of stuff that I can get on board with the ideas of what he says. But there's still something pretty good here in America. And I think we forget that as Americans. And that's what I fear, is that these people want to actually burn the system down. And I'm afraid if you burn it down, what rises out of those ashes is not going to be any better, or at least the chances of it being any better are not very good.
Well, when his supporters are carrying around hammer and sickle communist flags and talking about a socialist revolution, I mean, that gives me the jitters. And I mean, you can look at Sanders personally, you know, he didn't have a job until he was 40 years old. He was basically a bum living on the floors of other people's apartments. So his personal lifestyle kind of turns me off towards him as well. But as you said, the kind of things his supporters advocate are in many cases a lot worse than what he's advocating. So they want to tear the system down, but they basically want to replace it with outright communism, a lot of them. And again, it goes back to this, you know, resist capitalism hashtag that was on Twitter a couple of months ago. These people are, you know, they're probably aged, 20 to 30. They've got no idea whatsoever of the absolute horror that communism has wrought on the world over the last 50, 60 years. And we keep having to, you know, have that debate over and over again of why communism is bad and why leaving people to their own devices and building a free market economy is good. Because there's this fundamental ignorance surrounding capitalism. People think that the system of capitalism we've got now is free market capitalism. It isn't. It's corporatism.
Right.
It's crony capitalism. But they think that that's free market capitalism, which is why they go to the extreme other end of the equation and think that communism is the solution, when history has proven that it's not. We keep having to recycle that argument over and over again, because a lot of these millennials just don't know the history.
Right. So instead of detangling some of the crony capitalism and some of the Wall Street money and all that stuff, which he talks about, which is extremely legit, they go, we're going to burn the whole thing down. We're going to become communists, which is crazy.